Have you ever felt someone pulling away from you and somehow coming closer at the same time? It's subtle, almost invisible, a shift in tone, a pause that lasts half a second too long, a distance that feels heavier than silence, and you're left wondering, is this the beginning of the end or the beginning of something real? You feel it in your chest, that tension, that confusion, that quiet ache of not knowing where you stand. Because when an avoidant knows you're the one, something changes, not in the way you expect, not with grand confessions or sudden intensity. It's quieter than that, more internal, more dangerous. They feel exposed. Avoidants build their lives around emotional safety. Space is their shield. Independence is their armor. They learned early that closeness can cost too much, so they mastered distance. They became calm, controlled, self-contained. But you disrupt that system. You don't just attract them, you reach them. And that is what unsettles everything. When they sense you're not temporary, when they realize you're not just another passing connection, their nervous system reacts. It tightens. It scans for exits. It looks for flaws. Not because you lack value, but because you have too much of it. You matter. And mattering is terrifying to someone who survives by not needing anyone. So they go quiet. Not because they don't feel, because they feel too much. The calls become shorter. The texts less frequent. They seem distracted, distant. You start questioning yourself. Maybe you were too available. Maybe you said too much. Maybe you cared too openly. And here's the truth that will set you free if you let it sink in. Their distance is not a measure of your worth. It's a measure of their fear. When an avoidant knows you're the one, their control begins to slip. And control is everything to them. You represent unpredictability, emotional depth, the possibility of loss, and loss feels catastrophic. Research on attachment shows that avoidants suppress attachment needs to maintain autonomy. But suppression is not absence. The feelings are still there. They just live underground, hidden, pressurized. So when you become important, the pressure builds. They replay conversations. They analyze your tone. They notice when you pull back. They sense when your energy shifts. Even if they pretend not to care, they are watching closely. Because now there is something to lose. And losing you would confirm their deepest fear. That closeness leads to pain. This is the paradox. The closer they feel, the stronger the urge to create space. It's not rejection. It's self-protection. A reflex wired into their nervous system long before you ever arrived. But here's what changes everything. When you don't chase, when you don't panic, when you don't collapse into proving your worth, you break the pattern. Your calm becomes unfamiliar. Your steadiness becomes magnetic. Instead of confirming their fear that intimacy equals chaos, you show them something different. That closeness can exist without pressure. That love doesn't have to consume. And slowly, something shifts inside them. The distance no longer brings relief. It brings discomfort. Because now space feels like separation, and separation feels like risk. They start to feel the weight of what they could lose, and that weight is heavier than vulnerability. This is the moment most people misunderstand. They assume the pullback means the connection wasn't real, but often it means it was too real, powerful enough to threaten a lifelong defense system. When an avoidant knows you're the one, they don't run because you're wrong. They run because you matter. And when you understand that, truly understand it, you stop shrinking yourself to fit their fear. You stop chasing validation. You stop trying to earn what should be freely given. You hold your ground. And in that stillness, the dynamic changes. Because now the question isn't whether you're enough. It's whether they're ready to meet you where you stand. Whether they're ready to meet you where you stand will not be decided by your words. It will be decided by your energy. Because at this point, they are studying you in silence, not consciously, not strategically, instinctively. Their nervous system is asking one question over and over again. Is this safe? Or is this another trap? If you react with desperation, their walls rise. If you react with anger, they retreat further. If you react with fear, they feel confirmed. But when you stay grounded, something unexpected happens. Their usual escape route stops working. Distance no longer gives them relief. It creates tension. The space they once used to regulate themselves now feels like standing on the edge of losing something rare. And the human brain is wired to protect what feels rare. Scarcity increases value. Uncertainty intensifies focus. Potential loss sharpens emotion. Now you are not just someone they care about. You are a decision. And decisions create pressure. This is where the internal storm grows louder. They feel the urge to detach, but detachment feels different this time. It doesn't soothe, it unsettles. They check their phone more often than they admit. They replay your last conversation. They notice when your tone changes. They sense when your warmth pulls back even slightly. Because now there is risk. And risk forces clarity. Avoidants are used to low-stakes connections. Casual, replaceable, contained. But you disrupted that pattern. You created depth. And depth demands vulnerability. That's the word they've been avoiding their whole life. Vulnerability. To them, vulnerability once meant exposure. Exposure meant pain. So they built independence like a fortress. Strong, impressive, untouchable. But love doesn't knock politely on fortress doors. It seeps through cracks. It lingers. It waits. And when they realize you're not chasing, not collapsing, not begging to be chosen, the power dynamic shifts completely. You become steady. You become self-contained. You become secure. And security is unfamiliar territory for someone who equates closeness with chaos. At first, they resist it. They look for flaws. They question timing. They convince themselves they need space to think. But thinking doesn't quiet the feeling. It amplifies it. Because logic cannot override attachment once it has formed. Attachment is biological, chemical, primal. The more they try to suppress it, the stronger the rebound. Suppressed emotion doesn't disappear. It intensifies beneath the surface. So they feel restless, distracted, slightly off balance. And here's the part most people never see. They begin to confront themselves, not dramatically, not all at once, but in quiet moments, late at night. During silence they can't fill, they start asking uncomfortable questions. Why does this feel different? Why does losing this feel heavier than losing anyone before? Why does space no longer feel like freedom? Because freedom without connection feels empty when you've tasted something real. And now the stakes are higher than ever. If they retreat fully, they risk losing you. If they step forward, they risk losing their old identity. This is not just about a relationship, it's about transformation. And transformation is terrifying. But pain is a powerful teacher. The discomfort of possibly losing you begins to outweigh the comfort of emotional avoidance. That's when growth becomes possible, not guaranteed, possible. You cannot force that moment. You cannot manufacture it, but you can influence it by refusing to abandon yourself. Every time you hold your boundary calmly, you signal strength. Every time you choose self-respect over pursuit, you increase your value. Every time you remain emotionally regulated, you model the safety they never learned. And safety changes people. Slowly, they test new behaviors. A longer conversation, a vulnerable admission, a small step closer. It may feel subtle to you, but to them it feels enormous. Because stepping toward you means stepping outside everything that once protected them. And if they take that step, it won't be because you chased them. It will be because you stood still long enough for them to realize you were worth moving toward. And when they start moving toward you, even slightly, everything becomes real. Because now it's no longer theory, it's no longer internal conflict, it's action. And action exposes truth. You'll notice it in small ways first. A deeper question. A longer pause before they say goodbye. An honesty that feels unpolished but sincere. They may not suddenly transform into the perfect partner. That's not how this works. Growth for them feels like walking into a storm without armor. But they walk anyway, and that is everything. Understand what's happening beneath the surface. Their identity has been built around self-reliance, around not needing, around staying emotionally self-sufficient. If they step closer to you, they are rewriting that identity in real time. The brain resists identity change. It fights to protect the familiar, even when the familiar is lonely. So expect friction. Expect moments where fear resurfaces. Expect days when they seem torn between stepping forward and running back to what feels safe. This is the critical point. Most people panic here. They misinterpret hesitation as rejection. They react. They demand reassurance. They try to secure certainty immediately. And that pressure can snap the fragile bridge that's forming. Because what they need is not force, it's consistency. Consistency rewires trust. Repetition creates safety. When your words and actions align over time, their nervous system begins to relax. The threat response lowers. The walls thin. This is not weakness. This is neuroscience. Avoidant patterns were learned through repeated experiences. They can only be unlearned through repeated corrective ones. You become that corrective experience when you stay emotionally steady under pressure. And here's where the stakes rise even higher. If they fully recognize that you are the one, they will face a moment of undeniable clarity, a moment where staying guarded feels more painful than opening up. That moment is uncomfortable, raw, exposing. They may pull back one last time, not because they don't care, but because they are standing at the edge of change. Change demands surrender. Surrender of ego, surrender of control, surrender of the illusion that they can protect themselves by never needing anyone. If they choose growth, you will see it in ownership. They will stop blaming circumstances, stop hiding behind "I just need space," stop pretending detachment is strength. They will admit fear. They will acknowledge impact. They will take responsibility for how their distance affects you. That level of accountability is not small. It is a complete shift in emotional maturity. But listen carefully. Their growth is their responsibility, not yours. Your responsibility is to remain aligned with your own value, not to overextend, not to overexplain, not to overcompensate for their discomfort. When you abandon yourself to keep someone, you teach them that love requires self-sacrifice. When you stand firm in your worth, you teach them that love requires mutual effort. This is the line that changes everything, because if they rise, they will rise to meet strength. If they fall back into avoidance, you will not fall with them. And that is power. Real power is not making someone choose you. It is being so anchored in who you are that their choice does not define you. Feel that. Let it settle in your chest. You are not waiting to be rescued. You are not waiting to be validated. You are not waiting to be completed. You are already whole, already grounded, already enough. When an avoidant knows you're the one, their world shakes. Old defenses crack. Familiar patterns feel unstable. They stand at a crossroads between fear and connection. But you stand steady, and that steadiness becomes the mirror they cannot ignore. a mirror that reflects what healthy love looks like, a mirror that forces them to decide whether they are willing to evolve. Some will choose growth, some will choose comfort. Either way, you win when you refuse to shrink. Because the moment you stop chasing and start embodying your worth, you stop playing small in someone else's fear story. You become the standard. And standards don't beg, they attract. And when you become the standard, something irreversible happens inside you. You stop negotiating with fear. Not theirs, not yours. Because the truth is, this journey was never only about them. It was about you confronting the part of yourself that believed love had to be chased, earned, secured through overgiving. That version of you is dissolving now. You feel it, the urge to send the extra text, the impulse to explain yourself again, the temptation to shrink just to keep the peace, and you resist it. That resistance is growth. When you hold your value without aggression, without coldness, without games, you step into emotional leadership. And leadership shifts dynamics instantly. Humans respond to certainty. We are wired to move towards stability and away from chaos. If they sense chaos in you, they retreat. If they sense certainty in you, they lean in. It's primal. You are no longer reacting to their inconsistency. You are observing it, evaluating it, deciding whether it aligns with your future. That subtle shift places you back in control of your life. Because here's the deeper truth most people avoid. Loving an avoidant will test your attachment style just as much as it tests theirs. It will expose your fears of abandonment, your hunger for reassurance, your tolerance for ambiguity. This is your crossroads too. You can either let their hesitation trigger your insecurity, or you can let it strengthen your standards. One path leads to anxiety, the other leads to evolution. And evolution demands courage. Courage to walk away if growth doesn't happen. Courage to stay grounded when emotions rise. Courage to accept that you cannot love someone into readiness. That last one is the hardest. You cannot love someone into readiness. Readiness is an internal decision, a personal reckoning, a moment when they realize that protecting themselves is costing them something greater. If they reach that realization, it will not be because you sacrificed your needs. It will be because you showed them what healthy connection looks like without forcing it. And if they don't reach it, your power remains intact, because your worth was never dependent on their breakthrough. Feel the urgency in this moment. Time is passing whether you act or not. Emotional patterns solidify with repetition. Every time you accept breadcrumbs, you reinforce low effort. Every time you abandon a boundary, you teach someone how to treat you. This is not about pride. It's about alignment. Alignment between what you say you want and what you tolerate. When those two finally match, your life changes. You stop chasing potential. You start choosing reality. You stop romanticizing fear. You start demanding growth. And that energy is undeniable. If they are capable of evolving, your steadiness will draw it out. If they are not, your strength will expose it quickly. Either outcome saves you time, saves you heartbreak, saves you from shrinking for someone who refuses to expand. Understand the magnitude of that. You are not here to convince someone to love you properly. You are here to decide whether they have the capacity to. That shift alone reclaims your power. When an avoidant knows you're the one, their world shakes. But when you know you're the one for yourself, your world stabilizes. And stability is magnetic. So stand firm, not rigid, not closed, just rooted. Let them feel the difference between a connection they can take for granted and one they must rise to deserve. Let them feel what it's like to risk losing someone who refuses to abandon themselves. That is where real transformation begins. Not in pleading, not in chasing, not in fear, but in quiet, unwavering self-respect. And from that place, you don't just inspire change in them, you embody it. When you embody that change, the entire dynamic reaches its final test, because now there is no confusion left. They feel the difference in you, the calm, the certainty, the absence of desperation, and that clarity forces a decision they can no longer postpone. This is where masks fall. Avoidants survive through ambiguity, mixed signals, emotional gray areas. It keeps them safe. It keeps them uncommitted. It keeps them from fully stepping in or fully walking away. But your strength removes the gray. Now it's black or white. Growth or retreat. Depth or distance. And pressure creates revelation. If they truly believe you are the one, something primal activates. The fear of permanent loss. The awareness that not all connections can be replaced. The realization that independence means nothing if it costs something rare. Humans are wired for attachment. No matter how independent someone appears, the need for meaningful connection never disappears. It can be buried, distracted, rationalized, but not erased. When they see you standing firm, no longer chasing, no longer bending, they feel time closing in, not because you threaten them, but because your energy signals that you will not wait forever. Scarcity sharpens focus. The possibility of losing you becomes real, not theoretical. And reality hits differently than imagination. Imagination can be postponed. Reality demands action. This is the moment where truth surfaces. They either step forward with intention or they step back into avoidance. And when they step forward, it won't be halfway. It will be with visible effort. Clear communication, consistent behavior. Not perfection, but progress you can feel. Because effort is the language of readiness. If they choose avoidance instead, it will also be clear. Excuses will repeat. Distance will return. Emotional unavailability will feel familiar again. And here is the part that defines you. You do not argue with clarity. You do not negotiate with repeated patterns. You do not beg someone to become who they have shown they are not ready to be. This is the final evolution. You release the illusion that love is about endurance. It is about alignment, shared growth, mutual courage. You stop seeing their potential as your responsibility. You stop believing that if you just love harder, they will heal faster. You accept that transformation is chosen, never forced. And in that acceptance, you become unstoppable. Because now, whether they rise or retreat, your direction does not change. You continue building, growing, expanding. You continue becoming the kind of partner who attracts depth, not confusion. Feel the urgency of that. Every day you delay choosing yourself is a day reinforcing old patterns. Every time you ignore your intuition, you weaken your self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of secure love. Secure love does not beg. Secure love does not chase. Secure love stands tall and says, "Meet me here." If they can, you build something powerful, something rooted in conscious effort, something that required both of you to confront fear and choose connection anyway. If they cannot, you walk away with dignity intact. And dignity is magnetic. Because when you leave without bitterness, without chaos, without losing yourself, you demonstrate emotional mastery. You show that love is not about possession. It is about partnership. This is bigger than one person, bigger than one relationship. This is about breaking cycles. You are rewriting what love looks like in your life. You are ending the pattern of overgiving and under-receiving. You are choosing reciprocity over fantasy. And that decision echoes far beyond this connection. When an avoidant knows you're the one, their world shakes. But when you know your worth without needing their validation, your world transforms. That transformation is the real victory. Because the ultimate power was never in making them stay. It was in becoming someone who never has to chase. It was in becoming someone who never has to chase. Let that sink in. Because the moment you stop chasing is the moment the entire game changes, not just with them, with everyone, with yourself, with the future you're stepping into. Chasing comes from fear, from scarcity, from the belief that love is limited and easily lost. But you are not operating from fear anymore. You've seen what happens when you overextend. You've felt the anxiety of waiting for texts that should have come effortlessly. You've questioned your value in moments of silence. And you survived it. That survival rewired you. Now you understand something deeper. You understand that real connection does not require convincing. It requires courage on both sides. If they know you're the one, they will feel it like pressure in their chest, like a weight they can't ignore. And that pressure will force growth or expose avoidance permanently. There is no middle ground anymore. Because you removed it. You stopped rewarding inconsistency. You stopped normalizing emotional unavailability. You stopped telling yourself that potential is enough. Potential is not commitment. Chemistry is not consistency. Intensity is not intimacy. And once you truly grasp that, you become dangerous in the best way. You become selective. Selective people are powerful because they do not move from desperation. They move from discernment. They observe patterns. They measure effort. They notice whether words align with actions. That awareness creates standards, and standards create transformation. If they rise, it will be because they see that you are not impressed by temporary effort. They will understand that to keep you, they must sustain growth. They must show up fully. They must dismantle old defenses and replace them with accountability. That is not easy work. It requires them to confront childhood conditioning, to unlearn coping mechanisms that once kept them safe, to admit that independence without intimacy feels empty when faced with something real. But love that is worth having demands evolution, and you are no longer willing to accept anything less. Feel how far you've come. You started in confusion. You stood in uncertainty. You questioned yourself. Now you stand in clarity. Clarity is calm. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It simply knows. And knowing changes your posture, your tone, your energy. It shifts the way you respond. It shifts what you tolerate. It shifts what you attract next. Because whether this avoidant steps up or steps away, your trajectory is upward. Upward in self-respect. Upward in emotional intelligence. Upward in standards. That upward movement is unstoppable once you commit to it. So if they choose you, it will not be because you waited endlessly. It will be because you inspired growth through strength, through patience that had boundaries, through love that did not abandon itself. And if they do not choose you, you will not collapse. You will continue. You will carry the lesson, not the wound. You will recognize that someone who cannot meet your depth is not your destiny. They are your preparation. Preparation for something secure, something reciprocal, something aligned. This is the bigger truth. You were never meant to shrink into someone else's fear story. You were meant to expand beyond it, to break cycles, to model what emotionally healthy love looks like. That is leadership. And leaders do not beg to be followed. They walk forward with conviction. So walk. Walk in your worth. Walk in your boundaries. Walk in your calm certainty. Let anyone who wants to join you rise to that level. Because when you fully become the standard, when you fully choose yourself, when you fully refuse to settle for half-hearted effort, something extraordinary happens. You stop wondering if you are the one, and you start realizing that the real question was never about them. It was about whether you were ready to be the one for yourself.